This week, the Supreme Court delivered a seismic blow to U.S. trade policy, sending shockwaves through Washington and beyond. In a landmark decision, the justices struck down President Donald J. Trump's sweeping country-based tariffs, a move that has upended years of economic strategy and political debate. These tariffs, imposed on a range of foreign goods, were a cornerstone of Trump's America First agenda. They were designed to protect American industries from what he called unfair foreign competition, and to pressure trading partners into new deals. But the court's decision has now unraveled this central pillar, sending policymakers scrambling to assess the fallout. The ruling redefines the limits of presidential power over international trade, making it clear that such sweeping actions require more than executive authority alone. For Trump and his supporters, it's a major setback, but for critics, it's a long-awaited check on what they saw as executive overreach. For months, these tariffs disrupted global supply chains, raised costs for businesses and consumers, and fueled tensions with key allies and trading partners. American manufacturers struggled with higher input prices, while shoppers faced rising costs on everyday goods. Trump defended the tariffs as essential for protecting American jobs, revitalizing domestic manufacturing, and confronting what he called decades of unfair trade practices. Supporters argued that tough action was overdue, and that the tariffs gave the U.S. leverage at the negotiating table. But the court's ruling shifts the debate from economics to constitutional authority, raising fundamental questions about the separation of powers. The justices emphasized that Congress, not the president alone, holds the power to regulate trade, a principle rooted in the Constitution. This is more than a legal technicality. It's a direct challenge to a signature Trump policy, with immediate consequences for prices, trade negotiations, and America's global standing. Markets reacted swiftly, with uncertainty rippling through Wall Street and international trading floors. Businesses and consumers now face a new era of uncertainty as the rules of trade are rewritten. Small business owners worry about shifting costs, while families wonder how the changes will affect their budgets. Economists warn that the transition could be bumpy, with winners and losers across the economy. The central question now is whether this ruling will restore a traditional, rules-based trade system or spark new battles over presidential power. Lawmakers are already debating next steps, with some calling for new legislation to clarify the president's authority, while others urge a return to multilateral trade agreements. The court has drawn a clear line on emergency powers and tariffs, but the long-term impact remains uncertain. Analysts say it could reshape how future presidents approach trade and how America engages with the global economy. For the U.S. economy and its allies, this marks a pivotal turning point, one that will shape trade, politics, and global relationships for years to come. President Trump's tariffs, announced on April 2, 2025, Liberation Day, were unprecedented sweeping duties of 10% to 50% on imports from nearly every country. The administration claimed these broad measures were vital to address national security threats and economic imbalances, including the trade deficit and fentanyl crisis. Unlike targeted tariffs on steel or autos, these were all-encompassing, used as leverage in foreign policy, like the 50% tariff on India for buying Russian oil. The move sent shockwaves through American businesses, forcing them to absorb costs, raise prices, or overhaul supply chains. The administration saw the disruption as necessary leverage in global negotiations, but for many companies it meant instability and tough choices. Legal challenges quickly mounted. On August 29, 2025, the Federal Circuit Court ruled that President Trump had overstepped his authority, finding the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, IEPA, did not permit such sweeping tariffs. The decision was a win for thousands of businesses, but the administration appealed, warning of economic chaos if the tariffs were struck down. The Supreme Court agreed to hear the case, setting the stage for a landmark decision on the limits of executive power in trade. The Supreme Court's ruling was unequivocal. The IEPA does not authorize the president to impose broad tariffs. Only Congress holds that power. The justices warned that allowing unilateral tariffs would erode the separation of powers and hand Congress's taxing authority to the executive. President Trump denounced the decision as a partisan attack, but the court's message was clear. Presidential power in trade has limits, and constitutional checks matter. The ruling was about legality, not economic wisdom, reaffirming the judiciary's role as a check on executive overreach. With the tariff struck down, the immediate question is financial. What happens to the staggering $70 billion collected from businesses across the country? This sum, amassed over years of trade restrictions, now hangs in the balance, leaving both government officials and business leaders scrambling for answers. The fate of these funds will have far-reaching consequences, not just for the companies that paid them, but for the broader U.S. economy as well. The Treasury now faces the daunting prospect of issuing massive refunds, a move that could put significant strain on government finances. Returning such a large sum could disrupt budget plans, impact public spending, and send ripples through financial markets. The economic fallout could be felt by millions, from government employees to everyday taxpayers. But these refunds won't be automatic or simple. Instead, businesses will have to navigate a complicated and often frustrating process to reclaim their money. Many will face mountains of paperwork, strict deadlines, and the possibility of denied claims. Companies are likely to encounter a drawn-out legal battle, echoing past disputes over unconstitutional taxes. Legal teams will pore over documents, and some cases may drag on for years, creating uncertainty for businesses trying to plan for the future. For some, the only option may be to file lawsuits against the government, adding to court backlogs and further delaying any potential refunds. This legal uncertainty could discourage investment and slow economic recovery in affected industries. Meanwhile, with the tariffs gone, the average U.S. tariff rate is expected to drop sharply. This change will immediately ease costs for importers, potentially leading to lower prices for a wide range of consumer goods, from electronics to groceries, and offering some relief to American families. Yet for companies that restructured their operations to adapt to the tariffs, the sudden policy reversal brings new challenges. They must now rethink supply chains, renegotiate contracts, and adjust to a rapidly shifting trade landscape, all while facing uncertainty about the future of U.S. trade policy. Trump's tariffs strained relations with allies and triggered global retaliation, hurting iconic U.S. brands and disrupting established trade partnerships. The imposition of these tariffs not only led to higher costs for American consumers and businesses, but also created uncertainty in global markets. Many countries responded with their own tariffs, escalating tensions and making it harder for U.S. companies to compete abroad. This cycle of retaliation fueled anti-American sentiment and made international cooperation more difficult. Now, the Supreme Court's decision offers a chance to reset, potentially easing trade disputes and restoring trust in U.S. commitments. It opens the door for renewed dialogue and collaboration, as countries look for stability and predictability in their economic relationships with the United States. Diplomats must now navigate a world without the threat of sweeping tariffs hanging over every negotiation. This new environment challenges them to find creative solutions and build consensus through diplomacy rather than economic coercion. Some fear the U.S. may lose leverage in tough negotiations, as tariffs were once a powerful bargaining chip. However, many welcome a return to predictable, rules-based trade, where agreements are honored and disputes are resolved through established channels. The ruling signals to foreign governments that the U.S. is recommitting to established norms and multilateral cooperation, reassuring partners that America values its alliances and the global trading system. Still, allies remain cautious, wary of future policy swings and the possibility of abrupt changes in direction. Trust, once shaken, takes time to rebuild. The removal of tariffs limits the executive's ability to apply quick economic pressure, pushing the U.S. toward more traditional alliance-based diplomacy. This shift could encourage deeper cooperation and more meaningful partnerships, but it also requires patience and sustained engagement. The long-term effect could be a less confrontational, more cooperative U.S. foreign policy, if consistency can be maintained. Ultimately, the world will be watching to see if America's renewed commitment to diplomacy and multilateralism endures. The Supreme Court's decision has ignited fierce debate in Washington. Trump's allies call it judicial overreach, claiming it weakens America's defenses against unfair trade. Opponents hail it as a victory for the Constitution and congressional authority. The ruling leaves U.S. trade policy at a crossroads. Congress now faces pressure to clarify presidential powers over trade, while businesses scramble to adjust to the new environment. The process of issuing refunds and repairing international relationships will dominate the near future. Ultimately, this landmark decision has reshaped American trade policy and presidential power. As the dust settles, the nation faces a new era, one defined by legal, economic, and political uncertainty on the world stage.